I was actually just doing this with my kiddo, so I love this shot. He was up on my shoulders after a day at the amusement parks. It was great. All right, welcome back. You're here with our Master J, and today we are reviewing ISOM 1, the very first comic book from Rippaverse Comics. This is my third time trying to do this review in a coherent manner that makes any lick of sense. So we're going to try and go through it. First off, I found the first book to be very average overall, which will probably be reflective of my final score, but very intriguing. It has planted all of the seeds, all of the intrigue that is going to make me at least give this, probably this next round of books, a try across the board, and then we'll see if it's truly grabbed my attention to continue on supporting. This review is by somebody who has never read a comic book in their life. Complete comic newbie, not really much of a fantasy or story reader in general. So this is new guard. So take all of my criticisms with a grain of salt, as I do not have a refined palate for such things. But it is where I stand, and me as a newbie is how, honestly, how something like the Rippaverse can continue to excel over time for the long haul. Artwork overall was very solid. Nothing particularly bothered me about it. There are a couple background faces that look a little rough. I feel bad for this chick. She looks like she got stung by a bee on the face, but nothing overarchingly that was egregious. Nothing that jumped out. I liked how some of the panels were set up and shown. Those were very I just kind of liked some of the features. I have heard that some people thought some of the fight scenes were a little wonky. I can see where that criticism would come from, but being kind of new to reading comic books, they seemed perfectly fine to me. They didn't really bother me. Yeah, I had to maybe look at one or two for a second more just to kind of feel how it was all going, but again, this is a visual medium. If you could speed read it, what would it matter? If you're going to stare at a panel for a second longer just to go, oh, okay, I see how the flow of that fight. To me, that didn't bother me, but I know for somebody who might have read comic books a lot more, could be an issue for them. I would say the coloring, to me, was better than the pen and ink. So I definitely have the art above average. Above average for the art. Looks solid. It looks professional. The book itself, very high. This is, you got what you paid for. I mean, the freaking box that thing came in was impressive. I mean, the fact that everything comes bagged and boarded, ready to go, really high. The book itself is extremely high quality. The plot was very basic, which for book one in a kind of street level story, obviously going to be that way. So no issues with that being it. Obviously, when it is a little bit more street level and there are a lot of characters being introduced, so there's a lot of little side pages, a couple pages to this, a couple pages to that, it takes away from you being able to actually kind of fully develop your storyline, which was ISOM and Darren Fontano. So, but ISOM happened to go into the city again and kind of interact with Darren to try and find Jasmine. No issues with how that was portrayed, no issues with how that went down. Makes sense. He goes back in for the round two, clears out the crew, and then obviously has to kind of run from the police, goes into hiding at his sister's house for a moment, then finally goes back to get his suit from Taylorsville, back from Taylorsville, and then the book ending with Darren Fontano pretty much putting a hit out on ISOM, almost what seems to be through the police network, as it looks like the sergeant is the one looking at the computer screen there at the end. Plot's perfectly fine, but very average because it's trying to do a lot, and the plot itself of the book is probably only half of the pages. Half of the book is dedicated to the main plot, and the other half is dedicated to introducing all the other characters, world building, and just kind of other setups. So the actual plot is kind of, shortened. In terms of characters, obviously a ton of characters were introduced. I had the luxury of also getting the concept art book, which I will make a separate video on because I do have some issues with this art book. a lot of characters, a lot of excepts were introduced through the main book. So when I reference some of their names, which I do not think are fully given in ISOM, I got it from the concept art book. So the fact that a lot of excepts are introduced, the big popular one, even before we got ISOM 1, Yaira, introduced, looks like she's killing some people, and then all of a sudden, boom, she has the interaction with ISOM, sends him to the ICU, and she gone. Okay, don't know what that means. Don't know why she was fighting with the Alpha Corps, who seem to be... Alpha Corps are a little bit more straightforward, right? They appear to be a police force that are going to patrol other excepts. Why are they fighting with Yaira? Why was Yaira not allowed back in the city? Why was, what's going on with that? Don't know yet. It did not seem like ISOM and Yaira knew each other because they collided, and she's immediately like, hey, why are you undercover? And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. So not getting the feel that they do have a history, but again, as hopefully more of the books come out, we will get a better feel for what that is. Then we also get introduced very quickly to Michael Cooper and Lillian Roshani are just coming in. They're saying, hey, we got to make a plan. We got to have bigger plans in our new city. And that's it. You just get a kind of quick shot. They're in the Merc Club, and it is what it is. Santuan gets the most book time to any of the other excepts, as he's the one who gets in the confrontation with ISOM at Club Merc both times, as pretty much a hired security guard to Darren Fontano, who is the primary villain of our story. Pretty much just a very cliche mob boss for the group. Then we obviously have the star of the show, ISOM himself. I'm only really focusing on the except characters. There are obviously ISOM's sister, the chief that's the police chief that's introduced for a moment, Sam back on the farm, and Cedric Gaucho, the costume designer, are the primary non-except characters. Actually, before I jump into ISOM, there are also the two in the kind of little after credit scene, we'll call it. The band North Africa, and two of those band members being not just excepts, but of what appears to be otherworldly, which is a little different than how they kind of, you're led to believe the excepts are. So we'll see what the development on that, but you have Valadan and Takari. As for ISOM or Avery, I do have one issue with how I feel he should have acted. We might get more backstory. We might understand why he gets so confrontational with Darren. But how I see it is somebody who, as Darren even explains, was very passive, was very backseat, was very not pushing the boundaries of what was available to him, the opportunities he had, only to then end up owning his ranch farm, working hard on the ranch, and taking care of his business out there. Of why he would be so sensitive to being disrespected by Darren in that moment, and so infuriated by disrespect that he would then completely blow off the reason he's there and not remember that he's there to find Jasmine. He even acknowledges this, like, oh man, I was so just hot-headed for that. So did Avery have to give up the ISOM costume and the hero because he was too hot-headed and he couldn't control himself, and that's why he always took the step back, right? So how are we going to further develop that? Because right now the idea of wanting to get revenge on Darren for being disrespectful for somebody who seems a little bit more passive and just grinding on making the best of the opportunities or kind of making their own thing would do that, to me, doesn't necessarily jive directly. So we'll see how that continues to develop and how his character continues to grow as the next books come along. So that was my one issue, kind of just with Avery's character. Overall, obviously, as we were talking about the plot, there are like 5 cliffhangers going, right? You got the North Africa as the cliffhanger at the very end, like, okay, who are these quote-unquote gods? You got Sam having to pull his gun on the ranch when he's re-entering the building. Never come back to that. Why is Yaira in the city attacking people, attacking police, getting chased off by the Alpha Corps? And where did she end up? What's with these other 2 excepts? Michael and Lillian hanging out in Club Merc. What's their plans? Where are they going to go? What's their backstory? How are they going to get in the fold? And then what happens with Santuan? Is he still going to be the bodyguard? Is that just going to be kind of the main antagonist for ISOM to just get into Club Merc? And is he going to be hunting him down now as kind of part of the bounty? How does the regular police force operate within the city with these excepts? And as also mentioned, ISOM is not even an acknowledged except. The tests don't show him as an except, even though he has special powers. And there's something about a band that was locked on his ankle that in the next scene, we see him adjust that to the wrist with some sort of signal that went out to the sister. Is that just a bracelet? Is that some sort of tracking bracelet? Is that sort of power augmentation bracelet? Tons of questions. This book did nothing but raise questions, which is exactly, I think, what Mr. Eric July intended to do. He wanted to raise questions. He wanted people to want to come back and read more. Because of that, though, I think the book is extremely average in terms of like what this individual, just this book from a story standpoint is. So while I am very intrigued, and I will definitely be following up with ISOM 2 and whatever the other books that are potentially in work, I'm definitely probably going to go through this next round of books. I think he said there are 3 in work right now. ISOM 2 and 2 other ones. And one with Chuck Dixon, who, again, not a comic book person, but I know he did a lot of, he's done a lot of comic books, and he's a very prolific writer. I believe it was for Batman. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. So definitely have some good stories and some good talent working on those items. I am definitely going to be investing and looking at more, but ISOM number 1, I have a 5 out of 10. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I know a lot of people have really enjoyed the book and definitely have some nominal criticisms. I think some of the similar ones that I might have. Being a normie and not really knowing even how to judge art in a score of 1 to 10 and some of the other things that I've seen, that's kind of why maybe my score seems a little bit harsher. Well, hopefully as I continue to read more of these Rippaverse comics and maybe even expand my horizons into other comics and do more of these reviews, I will get a better feel for what's good, what's quality, and maybe downstream I'll want to revise the score on this book. But for not kind of knowing what I'm into and how this was a good setup book, the book itself, 5 out of 10 for me. So again, hope you enjoyed. Leave your comments down below to let me know your thoughts. Is my ranking too low? Do you love it more than I do? Why did you love it more? Do you have any counters to some of the criticisms I had? Let me know. I want to expand my knowledge. Want to expand some of the things. Maybe there are other things I missed in the book that other people captured that would maybe change my mind. So with that, have a fantastic rest of your evening, afternoon, or morning, wherever you are in this crazy world. Maintain that sanity, and as always, GG.